All right, this is Parshat Bo, the third chapter of the book of Exodus. And we're learning about the last three plagues and the final going out of the Jewish people from Egypt at the plague of the firstborn. And this is also next week. Next week will be the day of the passing away of the Rebbe Rayatz, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, that he passed away in 1950 on the 10th day of Shvat, and tonight will be the first day of Shvat. In Heintik Etc., in this week's Torah portion, the Torah tells us der Eberker, der Eberster, that God had geheißen said, Menzel nemen a sheps. Every Jew should take a sheep. Every Jew should take a sheep or a goat. Then center tag on the 10th day of the month of Nisan. Let's get this pointer here. On the 10th day of the month of Nisan, Makriv Zion, and sacrifice it for a Korban Pesach, for the Paschal offering. So lieb was hat men gedarft. Why did the Jews have to nemen them se, the sheep, them sent to tug the 10th day? Zog the result, the rabbis say, b'chadei, in order, as ven Dimitrium, when the Egyptians, velen zen, when the Egyptians saw, by the Jews, them sheps, the sheep, un velen fregan, they would ask, noch was halt ihr im in house? Why are you holding the sheep in your house? Rebbe will explain, and it's also explained elsewhere that the sheep was one of the gods of Egypt. Azol, the Yidden will say, nit nispoil, they wouldn't get excited, Baron, when unfurnt, and they would answer. What would they answer? And they would answer that the Eibishter, that God had zugesagt, he commanded, Vesi etchem el eretz atova. God had commanded, and he said, I'm going to bring you into the land of Israel. Was das gate of them darga elyon, which is the highest level. Oh, no, I skipped too many pages. Wow, look at that. Yeah, I fit it all right in together also. Look at that. Okay, here we go. What happened? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or something. This, I didn't go at all. I just went to the top of that page. Here we go. Oh. Okay, here we go again. So they would say, why did you bring it? And now let's go to the next page. Here we go. The God said we should do this. Mir holten dem sheps, we should hold on to a sheep in hoys in the house, oiv zu shechten, in order to kill it and sacrifice it for an offering. That's pretty logical. I mean, everybody does what they want to, right, in their house. Well, the Egyptians did not look on this favorably. The Mitzrayim haben gedient zu a sheps. One of the gods of Egypt was the sheep. I understand, because that was like the beginning of the zodiac, the Aries, whatever. In any case, they worship the sheep. Das is given their avodah zarah. This was one of their idols. They had a lot of idols. One of them was the river Nile. I mean, basically anything they couldn't understand that they thought that it could maybe influence, so they worshipped it. Therefore, Hadach Moshe Rabbeinu gesagt to Paro, he said to Paro, as nizbach v'lo yischalunu. They said, we want to slaughter a sheep, and we want to do it outside of Israel. Outside of Egypt. Let us go, because if we sacrifice your God here, then all of the Egyptians will kill us. So Paro, of course, did not let them go. So they sacrificed it, and in Egypt, everyone's going to get mad from this vegan. Therefore, God said, hold them sheps, hold for the sheep fear tug for 4 days in Shtub, right? They had to take the sheep on the 10th day of Nisan, and they slaughtered it on the 14th. Meanwhile, what did they do? They held it in their house, and it was braying and cooking and kicking, whatever sheep do. Un oif di fragrant. But regarding the question on the Egyptians, sollen sie antworten, they should answer midvelen das shecht. We want to slaughter and sacrifice it to God. Their tokev, the shtarka, this power, the defiance, Mesiras Nefesh and self-sacrifice, was the Yidden Haben Gatan, which the Jews had, or even Nitnis not to be affected, not to be frightened, Veren from the Mitzrayim, from the Egyptians, had gebrach the Gula. That's what brought the future redemption. Wie the Rizal Zogan, like the rabbis say, as B'shat Yitzis Mitzrayim, Zainen, given the Yidden gekommen, so mitzvahs, when they left Egypt, they had to have a commandment. Uvia state, like it says, at Aron Bari, it says the Jewish people, they were naked and undressed. Un halalu of the avodah zarah, halalu of the zarah. It says when the Jews were in Egypt, they naturally were drawn after their masters. Their masters were worshiping idols, so they also worshipped idols a little bit, at least. God gave a commandment from Korban Pesach, from the Paschal offering, when in Zechus, from the mitzvah, from the merit of this commandment, mit the Mesiras Nefesh, and the self-sacrifice which they had in order to do this sacrifice, Zayin ze Arois Gain, Arois Lezen, they were released from Egypt. Okay, so what's the Rebbe saying over here? One thing that the Egyptian exile awakened in the Jewish people was a defiance of the world. Here, God said to the Jews, take the sheep, and the Jews probably thought, hey, we're going to take the sheep, and this is not going to go by with quiet. And probably other Jews said, listen, God can do anything. He can do miracles. None of the Egyptians are going to notice it. And God tells Moses exactly the opposite. All of the Egyptians are going to notice it. Tell the Jewish people that when their next door neighbors ask them, what are you taking this for? Tell them it's a sheep and we're going to sacrifice it to God. So, and that's even worse. At least the Jews could say, the Jews were still under Egyptian power. They were outnumbered, who knows, 1,000 to 1 in Egypt, 500 to 1. And the Jews, they didn't have any arms, they didn't have any weapons. The Egyptians were all around them. They saw they're taking their God into their house. So the Jews could have said something like, listen, we're just, we like your God, we want to feed it, we want to take care of it, we're protecting it, we're just holding it for you. So make some sort of an excuse, and in the last minute, slaughter it and leave. You can do things like that. That's okay. You can lie to save your life. Here, they're not bowing down to the idol. God said, no, don't do that. All the Egyptians are going to notice it, and they're going to ask you why you're taking it, and don't make up any excuses. Right? You can think, listen, if the Egyptians notice it, it shows that God is not all-powerful. If God was all-powerful, we would make it that the Egyptians didn't notice. And now they do, and that's what we're supposed to do. He says, you know what you're supposed to do? Tell them the truth. Tell them we believe in God, and God is the king of the universe, and he told us to take it, and we're going to slaughter it. And so that awakened inside of them a participation, a partnership with God. They went out of themselves as well. As stated, it says, we learned about that in the prophecy in Micha. It says, just like the days of Egypt, in the future, when Moshiach is going to show you miracles. This means, as Gula Mitzrayim, the redemption from Egypt is a mushal. And this is just like an example, a forerunner of the Geula from the redemption that's going to be in the future. Vibaltas is a mushal from Torah, but because it is an example is brought in the Torah. In other words, they went out of Egypt. They did go out of Egypt. And it was amazing, and it was real, and it was an amazing miracle. But compared to the future redemption, it's only going to be just like a dry run. What do they call it? A practice. It's like practicing for the basketball game, the football game, whatever. The game is the real thing. The real thing is going to be going out of Egypt, of going out of the exile. And this going out of Egypt was just like a practice run. Vibal, because she is a mashal, this is an example. If it's a teaching from the Torah, it's verstanden, it's understood as the inyan, the things which haben gebracht, which brought to going out of Egypt, and euch bringen will also bring the future redemption. As it's known, as mashal, that if the Torah gives an example for something, Zayin, and all of the prati, the details, zugepasst, they all fit to the nimshal. All of the details of the example fit the thing they're trying to learn from. Right? Because the Torah is bringing it. So all the details are exact. Just like going out of Egypt, is gekumen, durach tokef is going out by means of defiance, starkheit, strongness. How do you say the Jewish people are stiff-necked for good, and Mr. Nefesh and self-sacrifice. Also, the future redemption will come through the same thing. That again, mit tokef and Mr. Nefesh will be by strength and self-assertiveness for Torah and the commandments. If you think about it for one moment, the whole reform movement and conservative movement is only because of apprehension. What is everybody going to say? We can't be different. We have to be like everybody else. No, we can get along. All sorts of concessions, to make concessions. Right? We can't, it's a little bit difficult, or it's a little bit difficult to really keep Shabbat. We won't have any members. We want this, what. In other words, making concessions. Okay, there are certain places in Torah where you can make concessions. If your life is in danger, then you're allowed to make concessions. You're allowed to. If your life is in danger, you're allowed to. But just because you're allowed, number one, because you're allowed to, doesn't mean that you have to. But you're allowed to. Number two, if you start making concessions, then you'll start making imaginary emergencies. First of all, you start exaggerating the emergency. Right? Like there was in America. If we make Hanukkah big menorahs outside, then there's going to be another Holocaust, is that? And then it comes down to the point where the person is just afraid even in his house. He's just afraid even to put on tefillin. Maybe somebody will walk in, maybe. So the essence of the Judaism, therefore, the beginning of Judaism is a powerful assertiveness and, how do you say, a lack of fear for your own welfare. You're willing to do anything for the sake of Torah and the commandments. If all the mitzvahs darfmen tanmit atokef, if all the commandments have to be done with a defiance, a power. Let's say it better. Defiance means you're going against something bad. With a simcha, you don't even pay attention to anything bad. You just pay attention to how good the commandments are. As if all the commandments have to be done. How much more so the mitzvah of loving every Jew. This is the foundation of the whole entire Torah. Darf men avadai tan, you certainly should do with the tokef, with the power and with the defiance, und von keinem nitnes polvan, and not to be, you say, there's a good word for it, repelled or um, I'm trying to think of a better word, or um, anyway, remove your enthusiasm by anybody. There's a good word I can't put. I don't know, but sometimes words jump around for me. But that you should not let anything lose your enthusiasm. Take away your enthusiasm. Discourage. Nothing should discourage you from loving every Jew. Now, why do you have to love every Jew and not love every human being? Well, you're supposed to love every human being. It's true, but love begins at home. And the Jewish people, you have what to love in them, because it says you should love your neighbor as yourself. Just like you're a Jew and you should love the Jewish part of yourself. And from that should come your power and your assertiveness, because you see how good it is to be a Jew and how good it is to do the commandments. So that good gives you the simcha, the joy that you can ignore the negative things in the world. Well, you should recognize that in other Jews as well. Mendarv Raiden mit the Yidden, you have to talk with another Jew, vegan Torah of mitzvahs. If you see another Jew that doesn't know what Torah and the commandments are, as your love for him should draw you, push you to try to encourage him somehow or other. At least make it available to him to come and learn Torah. When oibas pulled nid, and if it doesn't have any effect, darfman Raiden nachamol, you have to talk to him again. Oiba filu yanim brikit zich, even if a person break it, I think it means if he hits you. Break it. I think that's what it means. Darfman oich nid nispoil, don't be afraid, don't be affected, don't be discouraged. Adarabba, from them, I think he means he yells. If he gets mad at you and yells at you, he says you shouldn't be discouraged. Why? Because that he gets mad, this is a proof as that it has an effect on him. Right? Go to people in the street, would you like to buy an elephant? They'll just walk by you. Right? How'd you like to buy a refrigerator? He doesn't need a refrigerator. I said, what about Judaism? Want to learn Judaism? Get out of here. Who are you? It shows that it affects him. And Mele, Darfman, Raiden, therefore you have to talk with another Jew once again. Biz as vert zich bayim tsunemen, and until it will be accepted by the other Jew. Because we can learn this power of defiance and this power of bravery and he calls it the assertiveness and simcha, positiveness. We can learn from the sheep that they took. You going out of Egypt depends on exactly this attitude. And so it is with us now. The main obstacle now for us to bring the future redemption is that we don't have love of another Jew. We see another Jew that's not doing his job, and we say, okay, big deal. At least I'm doing what I'll go to heaven. It's okay. This is a improper attitude to take. It's not the attitude that took us out of Egypt. Mendarf gein mitatokef. You have to go with an assertiveness. Mendarf taka reden b'divrei nachas. You should speak in a calm way, in a pleasant way. Kadei as el niskabel, in a way that it will be accepted by others. Uchapitkam, like the previous Rebbe said, mendarf yena nit arup race in the nose. You don't have to tear off the other person's nose. But mitatokef, but you have to do it with an assertiveness. It has to be positive. On as men vet reden, when you speak in a courageous and a positive way, but it's also pleasantly vet men matzliachs, and then it'll succeed. Und das vet der weil das was der weil, and this which temporarily nit matzliach, and it doesn't succeed. Darfer vision, you have to know as the shul that the default is nit in yen. It's not in the other person nor in him, but in him. and you yourself. You're trying to convince somebody, let's say a Jew, to put on tefillin. He doesn't know what you're talking about, and he doesn't want to. But the Rebbe is assuring us that he does want to in the inside. He, the other Jew, wants to put on tefillin on the inside. He wants to. And the reason that he's not putting on tefillin is because of you. If you would really be, you would believe yourself, and if you were pleasant and you really believe that you're benefiting this other person, and you're not thinking at all about any sort of reward that you're going to get or that he's going to get, or that the other person is going to get, we're not thinking about rewards. We're talking about doing the truth because it's the truth. We're not talking about investing in an uncertain thing. We're not talking about making a profit. We're talking about that the other Jew activates his true identity. Every Jew wants to put on tefillin, that's all. Yemen is good, the other person is good. Nor by him, but by him, Zayin does nit kind devorim hayotzim in a lev. It must be that I'm not really speaking from the depth of my heart. Therefore, is nita the sveite halb. It's not the other person. No, because the words are not coming out of my heart. Therefore, they don't go into the heart. There's a saying in Hebrew that says "Davarim hayotzim min alev nichnasim lalev." Words that come out of the heart go into the heart. In other words, if you speak genuinely for the benefit of the other person, they go into the other person's heart. Now, sometimes you can speak genuinely, but it's not things that are really inside of the other person. For instance, you try to converse the other person to be a Republican or a Democrat or some other religion or whatever it is. Now, you're really genuine. You really think, mistakenly or whatever, that this is really good and you really are trying to benefit the person. But the point is that what you're saying is not true. The other person does not want, it's not good absolutely to be a Republican or a Democrat or some other religion. But to speak to a Jew about Judaism, this is the true nature of the Jew. He wants to do it. The reason that your words are not going into him is because you're not speaking genuinely. Now, this also does not necessarily mean that immediately he's going to say, oh, yes, right? So you can say, okay, I'm not speaking genuinely, so maybe I should stop speaking. Sometimes you can speak to a person, and the person has to have 10 people talk to him. Let's say you're the first one. You brought it a little bit closer, that he starts to do the Torah and the commandments. Some people, they have to have a positive experience, and all the talking in the world won't convince them. Sometimes only an example. They'll see something, they'll hear something. Therefore, there's I'll take a simple example. There was, I can't remember the year, I think it was 1956 or something. There was the World Series, and there was a Jewish pitcher by the name of Sandy Koufax, and he didn't pitch because it was Yom Kippur. And the Rebbe said, you have no idea what a positive effect this has on people. Right? But it could be it has positive effect on people, but they don't know for what. It's a good thing, he's a Jew. He himself didn't have much of a positive effect on him, except for that Yom Kippur. He didn't become an observant Jew. But other Jews saw it, and they realized, hey, maybe there really is something to this Judaism. So together with your positive speaking, this has an effect. Therefore, is nita de tzveiter holden. It's not because you don't say words coming out of your heart. So therefore, the other half is missing. Nichnasim alalev. They don't go into the other person's heart. Darv zagan a kapitel tilim. If you see someone, a non-observant Jew, so you should pray for him. Say a psalm, as zol zayin yotzim yalev, that when you speak, it should be genuine. Ubamela, therefore, vetzayin nichnasim alev, then it'll go into the other person's heart. Azoy vi b'shas yitzias Mitzrayim, just like the time when the Jews left Egypt, is durach them by means of the power and the assertiveness of the Jewish people. Vazei zayin and nit nispal, that they were not at all discouraged, from the Egyptians, right? They took the sheep and was the god of the Egyptians. And the Egyptians got mad. It didn't affect them at all. Zayin is they arose from them because of the fact that they were not affected negatively by the Egyptians. So they left Egypt. They also took with them silver and gold from the Egyptians, what the Egyptians owed them for 210 years of slavery. Und the Mitzrayim seien alle der trunken, and the Egyptians that pursued them, they were drowned. Like it says, not even one of them remained. When oich der einer, and the one that did remain, it says Paro remained afterward. Was is Yageblev, and he remained, is Darnach afterwards. He is given, he came to Nineveh, and he was also there. He also had problems also in Nineveh. Also, so he didn't. It was stubborn. He wasn't affected by the flood, by the other thing. He said he also his life wasn't a very happy one. Azoy oich, Easter also now. When men vetgain mitatoke, if you go with a power, when Mesiras Nefesh and self-sacrifice is nitness boil, not to be affected from anyone. Velen Allah menagdim, then all of the opposition, batal veren, it will dissipate. Un as ved zayin agula atida, there'll be a future redemption b'mehera b'yameinu, quickly now in our days. Today's lesson. Have a good day with Moshiach now. Tomorrow, Be'ezras Hashem, we'll continue 8:15 in the morning. I put up on the website, on the YouTube, the Torah portion for today, the learning with the commentaries from last year. And also I put up last year's class that we learned Torah Or. Because the Rebbe said you should learn Torah Or, that'll bring Mashiach. So in the morning, though, I wanted to learn the Hasidic discourse, Bati Lagani, so that's what we learned. So there's a lot of things that I put up this today, that'll be put up this week. Have a good day. See you tomorrow, God willing. Thank you very much for tuning in.